In today's episode, I'm interviewing the founder of Mikuna, Ricky Echanique. With a mission to change the future of food by nourishing people and the planet, Ricky has deep roots in agriculture and in Latin America. In today's episode, we're going to talk about bringing Chocho to market, bringing it to the United States, what the Chocho bean is, how it stands out against other plant-based proteins, the nutritional profile, and how this very special bean healed Ricky's chronic fatigue and immune issues. It's a pleasure to bring my friend Ricky onto the show. Ricky, I'm so excited to finally welcome you on the show. You are my Chocho guardian angel, fifth generation Chocho bean family farmer, and just such an awesome guy, business minded, and really like someone I can always call and lean on. So thank you for jumping on the podcast today and telling your story, telling the story of Mikuna, and telling the world about the magical Chocho bean.
Yeah, no, Kelly, first of all, thank you so much for having me here today. I'd be beyond stoked, and I'd be beyond stoked like I got to meet you and get to know you this past few months, and no, I'm excited. I'm here to share literally the best plant protein. I want to say the best protein, just period, on the planet, and a little bit what goes behind the scenes from the ground up. I'm actually my family. I am a fifth generation farming family, but not Chocho family. So my family uh, started the cacao business and trade back in the 1800s in southern Ecuador. So uh, usually credited with being one of the bigger exporters into the New York market or Paris or European market back in the day. And I've grew up in a farm. I grew up in a farm in a town called Balao, south of Ecuador. And over there, my family had a few acres, and I learned a lot about farming, agriculture, and people. So that's what drove me here. I think that that's the biggest motivation, because I always think I knew deep down that I want to do something related to this. I just when growing up, I felt that usually bananas and cacao are not environmental friendly crops, right? So you have deforestation, or they're water intensive. There's ways, of course, that you can optimize those, but I wanted to do something truly different, and I you know uh, focus on sustainability. I've been a big advocate for sustainability and environmentalism for all my life. I was uh, funny enough, tour guide in the Galapagos Islands for quite a long time, and went to UC Santa Barbara for environmental science. So big driving factor into making Mikuna happen, into why we chose Chocho as like this little regenerative crop that's going to change the world, and why we're here. So uh, kind of like how we got started. So
Well, I'm excited to get to that story. I want the world to get to know you a little bit better in regards to, your childhood and your own personal healing struggles. We've talked about how you had chronic fatigue syndrome and a compromised immune system. I remember, on one of our coffee dates, you telling me that you were pre-med for a moment and thinking about how I think you've always had like an amazingly big heart. But it's almost like the birth of Mikuna and bringing this regenerative crop of the Chocho bean to the United States and to shelves for people and making it easily accessible. Kind of is the convergence of your healing journey, your goals to help people and the planet. So can we talk a little bit about you and your childhood and growing up, and what your goals were, and when you were diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome and a compromised immune system?
yeah, so actually it's like a lifelong story, and I feel like my whole life has been building up to this. Funny enough, it's weirdly coincidental or not. And I will tell you like a fun fact about Chocho after this, but and what do I and Chocho have in common personally, which is hilarious. But I think that what I I in Ecuador, there's nothing much to do. I mean, like there's sport. Like in my mind, there's sports, and like how you become someone or how you stand out, you want to be like a sports person. I went to a tennis match with my dad early on, and it was pretty popular. It was Davis Cup. It was Ecuador against England, and I said, "Dude, I want to play tennis. I want to be the best tennis player in the world." And I said into that journey, I trained for like a long time, and when I reached like my mid teens, you start getting pretty serious, and you are into competition or looking to for the path to be professional. And in Ecuador, there's not a lot of professional tennis players, so like you're always trying to like figure out like the edge or like how to do it by yourself. And one of those things was like I got a physical trainer or like a somebody that would like train like my stamina, like running times, all this stuff. And they did tell me to consume protein. And I started to get into a diet and consume like whey protein isolate. I remember until this day, I actually won't say the name of the brand, but I remember until this day that I would get so bloated out of eating that protein that I just like stopped doing it. I felt laggy, I felt slow. Obviously, it wasn't supernatural or organic, right? But I realized like I had like this lactose intolerant thing that I didn't realize at the time. And I wish I had better options at the time. And that kind of stuck with me. And like it's something that got ingrained with me that I couldn't figure out to get that extra edge while training. So fast forward a little bit like later, in life, like I went to college, UC Santa Barbara. um, I decide I want to start my own business after working a couple of like jobs that were not really me. And I moved back to Ecuador, and I am we had the fires here, by the way. Like we had like this huge fires like in like 2017. And I was like literally we were underwater on fire, or like there were like mudslides. Like it was like a whole mess. So I said, like, look, if there's ever a time to go back, it's probably right now. So went back, um, decided to, kind of like give it my all, sold the property and that I had in Ecuador, and started looking for the next thing. So originally, how Mikuna got started was I went to look for like adaptogenic plants in the Amazon. I feel that 97% of the world's healing plants are in the Amazon, and 1% are discovered. So I went into this whole trip and I found pure amazingness. And I was like, wow, like this is really cool. And um, I guess like what stopped me from doing that after a few months and going through stress, I was going like my parents were getting divorced, and that was a handful. I helped my parents get divorced, which I wouldn't recommend to any child to do, or child
Mhm.
or person. So that was really stressful. And then like I after like a few months of that, I am taking Lauren on a trip to Tofino. I like surfing, so why not surf the coldest water possible and just like adventure a little bit. And then she looks back at me. I'm always like in front, so like my whole life I've been playing tennis, surfing, climbing, going outdoors, and she tells me like, Ricky, you're really slow today. And that was like the first time that she noticed. I didn't notice the time kind of went on by the trip. Came back to Ecuador, and over time things got worse. Like I just, started lagging. I started sleeping like 16 hours, sometimes even 18 hours a day. I would go to sleep on a Monday and wake up Wednesday, very laggy. Like it would cost me a lot to go from the bed, just like simple trip from the bed to the bathroom. Like I was so weak. And funny enough, like I don't know a lot of people that have gone through chronic fatigue syndrome, or, like Epstein Barr or mono. I believe my mono like was very exacerbated by the stress, and it became like this permanent type of thing
Mhm.
that just took over my entire life. So the hardest thing there was being in bed most of the day after being such an active fit person and
Mhm.
not being able to do anything. Right? So like I think like there was like a mental portion to all of this that I think that it's unspoken for. I think people talk about the plants and the Chocho, but there's like a very strong mental factor of feeling hopeless and trying all these different doctors. So I went to immune specialists, like general practitioners, like blood specialists. Nobody everybody told me I was fine. Besides my Epstein bar was high.
Mhm.
So that was like really tough to go through because at the end of the day, even though I was eating the right things, eating well, I I wasn't getting a lot of results. So it was like maybe like 6 or 8 months like that. In those months, I was actually keeping my computer developing Mikuna, which is funny. Starting to research like the market and how to launch and all the entrepreneurial things. I just did them from my bed, basically. And I guess like in my frustration, I remember like one day, funny enough, I posted it on Instagram like as a story. Like one day I got just like super frustrated with this and said like, dude, I can't let this conquer my life. And I was like, basically took a trip. I drank a lot of yerba mate, and we have coca leaves in Ecuador and Peru and Bolivia in the Andes. It's supposed to give you energy and um, uh, avoid like altitude sickness or just general sickness. It gives you like this boost of energy. And I was like, okay, like made like a couple of infusions and drove myself back into the Amazon to kind of like get in touch with like all these plants. Over there, I started looking more into a Guayusa extract. Guayusa was discovered like in the early 2010s by a guy named Tyler Gage, the founder of Runa.
I
And
love Runa.
yeah, Runa was a great thing. So I was just like looking for like a Guayusa extract that figure out like how to break this energy thing. And I spent a few days there. I remember like being so frustrated, like, oh man, like I can't do this. I basically was in tears, like over there, like dragging myself from bed to couch to whatever.
Mhm.
And then like on the trip back home, I decided I'm gonna take the long way home and see what is out there. And there's like a you go to Quito, you go back to Quito, which is in northern Ecuador, and there's like this highway that divides both sides of the mountain ranges. So like you have Cotopaxi on one side, Chimborazo. So there's a in the volcano alley, there's a highway that goes all throughout Ecuador, divides Ecuador like mountains in half. So I'm going through this highway and then like boom, detour. And so like I never been to that place. And I know most of Ecuador. So I was like, it's like 10-hour detour, but why not? And so like if I ever have time, is right now. I haven't been out of my room for a while. So I went there and it was not a paved road at the time. And I started to see all these little purple flowers sticking out. And I was like, wow, like it's really cool. Lavender. Lauren would love to be here. I have never seen a chocho plant before that. And even though we commonly consume chocho in Ecuador. It's a fairly common food. I didn't discover chocho. I mean, chocho is available in most markets, uh, or little trade shows that or not trade shows, but there's like these little trade markets that happen everywhere. Um, so I was like, oh wow, like it's really cool. So I started talking to the farmers, like, hey, why do you put this in your potato plantation or your quinoa plantation? And people in Ecuador, they're besides being ultra nice, like they don't have a lot of education, but very intuitive and fine tuned with the land.
Mhm.
And what farmers are telling me is just like it makes everything grow better.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, interesting. And I was like, okay, like how do you maintain it? It's like, oh, we don't maintain it. We just throw the seeds and it grows. It just kind of grows. So they're like, oh wow, like so these farmers were using this purple little flower to um, enhance their current productions. And then I would go again, like just kind of like find another parcel, and then they'll say, "Oh, it protects this crop from all these plagues." So they had like a protection nuance into it as well. And long story short, I did this by like 10 times across this 10-hour journey, and I figure out that, oh my god, like this is like an unbelievable crop that has this amazing environmental properties. So it's drought tolerant, right? So it doesn't require any water to grow. No fertilizers because it fixes nitrogen, right? So it's
Mhm.
very like, um, and it protects other crops. Then I started to dive more into it. So I met with one of the leading scientists in Ecuador doing the research behind it. And it was proven that any crop planted after Chocho the following year, it's 144% more it yields 100%, 144% more. So it's like, oh my God, this is for farming, this is unbelievable. So okay, well, like I'm up to something. I had like this environmental background, and I wanted to see, okay, what can we do here? I mean, like this is a bean. I'm looking for like this regenerative foods, and I go back to Guayaquil, where my family's from, and I started like figuring out, okay, let's find a way to make this beans into a powder and see what it does. And that's when the wild ride started, because we I remember like it was maybe like a Monday that I got the beans finally, like, gone dehydrated in my house. Nobody had turned them into a powder at the time. And we made like this fine powder, grounded them, and we sent them to a lab in Spain. And the lab in Spain like said, yeah, we can do food testing. Like, we wanted to test for everything, like protein and stuff. Everything that had been at the time uh, published about Chocho had only been done in scientific labs. There was no like really food lab. There was no nutrition labels. There was very, very little information, like tangible information about it. And so we sent it to Spain, and after like 3 weeks, they tell them like, we can't analyze this. And so like, why? Like what? Like the first question they asked me, so what are you adding to this? It's like, no, this is one ingredient, right? So um, I sent him another sample, and I said like, look, we can't analyze this in the food lab because it has too many nutrients. So we're going to send it to our pharmaceutical lab for a proper analysis. When the pharmaceutical lab sent me the results back, and we see 54 to 60% protein, high in manganese, high in calcium, zinc, right? I started to see, wow, like this is truly like the world's most actually the world's superfood, right? So um, I started to see like, oh my god, this is unreal. So I made it into a powder. We went through the debittering, which we're going to talk in a little bit, um, and I started to consume this like every day just to see what happens. I mean, like at that point, I had nothing to lose. And funny enough, like after like maybe 2 or 3 weeks of consuming it, I started to feel better, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. But what it impacted me the most, going back to when I played tennis, is like it was so smooth on your stomach. It was so smooth on your digestion, and it felt so clean. Like I cannot express. Like I never had that with a food where you feel like very clear and clean. It's just like you feel clean, like from like the place that it grows. So I was like, okay, this is it. I think that I'm gonna put a stop into my Amazonian medicinal plant journey and see what we can do. Sure. So that's how Chocho happened. And yeah, I mean, looking back, is it was like a combination. I mean, I feel like there's so many details that I am missing on the story. Like, I ran out of gas in the middle of the Andes, or like, like I had to borrow my friend's car at the time because I'm not from Quito, and his mom was really upset at me that I took it further than I should. But it's been definitely like an adventure. It's I think like Chocho in itself, it's an adventure, and I will explain that in a second, where we talk about the farmers. I think my story is good, and I think that, like, I'm not saying that my story is good, but I think my story is a good. People always ask me for it, but I feel that there's a deeper and bigger factor here. The story of the farmers that harvest church is actually really, really special, and it's way bigger than anything that I can do, to be honest. Um, and the reason for that is because these people, like when you're up there, right? First of all, like imagine driving this road like in Switzerland or something like that. It looks like that, but it's Switzerland, but poor. Okay. And there's extreme poverty everywhere. Kids are working. There's a lot. You will see always a lot of people on the side of the road for miles and miles, and there's no cars. There's no public transportation. The air is thin. It's cold, right? So I was like, like the setting itself, it's hostile. And most of these chocho farmers, they harvest chocho in 45 to 55 degree slopes at altitudes between 11 and 14,000 feet. And it blows my mind that they have the will or the physique or the stamina to do this and for a 9 month crop. All right. So that factor is super huge into Mikuna being mission driven company. I think that there's a factor that we want to honor the people that are there that are harvesting this amazing crop. And there's also another nuance is like in right now that people are farming more chocho, um, there is a saying that is the Bitcoin of the Andes. And I'm like, what? Why do you call this Bitcoin? Or how do you guys know about Bitcoin?
Mhm.
And the I asked like, like what do they do with chocho when once it's harvested? Because like it takes 9 months, like they do manual labor to get the chocho all together. And what they do is like they save it for a few months. So these people live on their savings most of the time, or like on their what they can sell and harvest. So because Chocho has like this like longevity that you can store the seeds for 2 3 years, they save it as a cash crop. So
Mhm.
a lot of the crops are like held by the houses or like the communities until they can sell it at a good price and provide for their family. So there's like a huge factor here where across the Andes, people are starting to realize the potential of having a crop that one they can use as a cash crop in the long run. Mikuna has created the demand, also Be Well by Kelly has created a demand for it. But there's there's like so many like good feel good factors into what goes behind the scenes bringing this crop to life. I mean, the endurance that these people have, their long times that they have to travel to even sell it. All these places are extremely remote.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, like there's a beauty to it that it's hard to describe unless you're there and see it, and it's super special.
I just have to say, like, it feels, since we started this relationship, it feels really good to support their quality of life and the man hours and the work and the dedication to something that is, that is a regenerative crop, that is a complete protein, that is lectin free, that is loaded with all this nutrition and nutrients. But, it always kind of goes back to the people, right? It's
Yeah,
all of their hard work. And it's knowing that, we have the ability to provide a better life and be environmentally friendly at the same time. I mean, that's why for me, when we first met, it was like, I'm not just going to create a Me Too pea protein and bring it to market. Like I could do that in a weekend and I have access to that and I know what my formula is, minimal ingredients, like put my bag on it. And a lot of people go out and do that and they make lots of money. But the reality is like if you're not doing better for the environment and for the consumer, which I think, you talk about the bloating piece, like I think about the completeness of the protein in comparison to pea, which can be, you know, should have methionine added to it to be a really robust complete protein. And I think about, where it's coming from, bulk processes and, China and being shipped on slow boats here and then looking at heavy metals and all of those things. It just feels really good. So it was never going to be just a Me Too product for me. And I'm so glad to have met you and gotten to know, like, really how deep your roots go and bringing this to market and being able to support that. But I think for a lot of people, they're like, Chocho, you mean cacao? Like they just have no idea what it is. So let's break down, where can you find Chocho? How is it traditionally eaten in Ecuador or in South America? What dishes will you find it in? And then when farmers were adding Chocho to their land, are they rotating it in after quinoa or something else? Are they growing it at the same time? How many of these farms have turned over into complete Chocho bean farms? that are continuously growing this crop. And what does it look like? What does that process look like from when the seed is planted all the way through, soaking, the debittering process, the grinding process, and the shipping process to us?
No, absolutely. So to answer your question, Ecuador is one of those countries that it has like an endless supply of amazing food.
Mhm.
Being from the coast, like some of the best foods in the world come from there, and fishing industries. There's a lot of artisanal fishing, so like little boat fishing everywhere. Like people that grab a fish same day, cook it, sell it. Um, there's um there's a plate in the coast called ceviche, and I think like everybody knows ceviche, kind of like the Mexican style version, but you have the Ecuadorian Peruvian version, which is basically like this soup, right? So like you have like you boil the fish or the shrimp, and you get like this very like dense stew, and then you add raw fish or shrimp into it with like all these spices and sometimes like peanut butter or it's amazing. But in the mountains, obviously, they don't have an ocean. So in the mountains, they use the chocho, like they hydrate the chocho. So they actually debitter the beans are like in an artisanally, like in the house or something, and they use the chocho as the protein replacement. So you get like this meat texture. So there's actually like a dish that's very popular near Chimborazo, which is the highest mountain in Ecuador, called ceviche, and it's it's spicy. Like this, they serve it with a little bit of chulpi, which is like this toasted type of corn thing, and they add all these like onions and spices, and it's pretty good. So that's how chochos. To answer your question, that's how chochos traditionally eaten by local groups and stuff. It's not really that popular. In fact, um, it's called poor people's food. Like people have marginalized. Like it's like, oh, you're eating chochos. Like, like it's not. It was not seen well just because like a lot of it's like a staple food for poor people, so like it never like became ultra popular anywhere. You can
Mhm.
find it in supermarkets, you can find it in anywhere, but like just like the raw kind of like hydrated bean version, which is a comparable brand here to our US customers or the consumers, is like brahmi, right? So like you have like
Mhm.
this like hydrated beans. Now, where do you find it? uh, you find it like usually like, okay, so what's special about like, and I like this question because there's something very unique about chocho compared to other crops, which is it can grow in very poorly maintained and arid sandy soils. Okay, so meaning that you can go like there's like an area in it's like central Ecuador, which is like very dry, and Ecuador is like in the tropics, so you have it all like air moisture, like it's always raining everywhere, right? But there's like this area that, for some reason, it's a microclimate that's like really, really dry, and the soil is like literally like sand. It's like just like falls apart. Nothing really grows there. So chocho thrives on that. So it's been proven that chocho, the more stress that you put into the plant, whether it's altitude, arid soils, the more yield that it has. So when the plant comes in, it has like this like roots that has like 6 feet long. It brings up all these like uh, nitrogen fixation and nutrient enrichment of the soil after like usually it's between 6 and 9 months that the plant takes to grow. And farmers, what they do is like they would plant chocha for the first 9 months and then rotate it with a short cycle crop, which is like either potato, carrots, tomatoes. Everything grows in Ecuador, really. So I'm not gonna like say like a million.
Yeah,
So
we get
like
it.
yeah, everything in Ecuador grows, but like the point of that is so they have better yields on their lower producing crops, right?
Mhm.
So um, I like to put the potato example just because it's a it's a crop that it's hard to harvest and it requires a lot of land work and digging and stuff like that. So um, the usually like they would do like long cycle, short cycle, and to address like your other question to how does chocha come to life, right? So you grab the chocha seed, so like this pearly little white seeds that the chocha plant gives at the end of the year. We like to personally, or we like as a company to have like some sort of selection process. So we usually pick the best batches of each batch every year. So there's like we're always constantly improving the performance and taste and viability of the seed. But usually grab like the seeds. Farmers always save, and that's why it's called the Bitcoin, right? As a
Mhm.
joke, because like usually save like 10 to 15% of their total harvest to use for seeds. So you grab the seeds, you plant it. There's like this little sprout, green leaf, um, little clover type of thing that comes up, and that becomes like a after maybe 3 months, it becomes like this lupin flower. Okay, so it's like a purple. Chocho isn't, but by default, it's purple or like semi blue, like it has like a dark blue tone to it. So it grows into this flower, and as the winter starts to kick in, and the equator, the flower transforms into these like little pods, and each flower dies, and like these pods start to replacing the flowers, and each pod has 4 to 6 chocho beans. Now, the crazy part is we get our winter, or we are at the peak of our winter in around September, October.
Mhm.
So that's when like the driest part of the season before the rains starts. So like all the chocho gets dried up, and that's when you have like your harvest, and like you start seeing like like people manually grabbing the chocho from the plant. So there's like a manual process, manual intensive process, or like in some occasions it will have like these manual harvesters, but still like you're doing manual work like in steep hills. So that's how like chocho comes to be. um yeah, I mean, like
Yeah, so you're using seed and bean sort of interchangeably. The chocho bean is a bean from a pod that comes from that purple flower, right? And then from there, can you eat that bean as is, or does it need a process before it becomes edible? And when does it taste delicious, and what does that process yield?
that's a great question. So yes, I am interchanging like bean and seed. Yes, both the
They're the
bean and a
same.
seed, they're the same. Yes.
Okay.
So the chocho, for the sake of the conversation, we'll keep it on chocho seeds.
Okay.
um but the chocho has like this very, very prominent alkaloid as a coating, and that's why we have never seen chocho commercialized before, because that alkaloid is very, very um, hard to remove from the plant. So
Mhm.
usually, like if you were to do that in your house, it would take you 2 or 3 days of constant washing the bean and heating it up, and like like having like water, like put it like in a bucket of water, remove it, put another bucket of water, and so on. So what Mikuna has been able to do is find the right way to industrially do this process. Obviously, for trade secret reasons, I cannot speak much to it.
Yeah.
But the beauty of it, it only requires water. So
Mhm.
we're not adding any chemical processes to remove this bean. So when we finally were able, by the way, like alkaloids, like I think, funny enough, we had like some Japanese consultant in the early days speak to us about alkaloids, and then I think like the threshold is like 0.003 that they
Mhm.
can accept for like a product. So that was their target. I think like here in the US and Europe, I think it's 0.08. So our goal was to get it down to zero somehow. So we
Mm.
went through a crazy amount of tests and reiterations, and when we finally got it, I think that an accident happened, which actually makes the feature of the protein also like prominent, which is by removing the alkaloid, we also remove all the anti-nutrients that beans have as a coating. Usually, why the plant issues the alkaloid or the anti-nutrients is to protect from predators.
Mhm.
So when we did that, we remove the anti-nutrients, we remove the oxalates, we remove everything that makes like beans or typically legumes make you bloat. Also, we removed the taste, the lupin beanie taste. We removed it. So the debettering process has been a blessing, not only because we removed the alcohol and we could finally commercialize Chocho, but there's all these like waterfall benefits of the end product. So at the end of the day, the Chocho is debettered. You you dehydrate them, so it goes through a dehydration process, and we melt them into a flour. So because of that process, the end product is like this very mild, nutty, subtle tasting. And I want to hear your opinion on this um, uh, protein or like end product, right? So that's how we got there. In your opinion, what made Chocho special from like a taste profile or like digestive profile? What has been your experience since can you I don't know, like the first time you tried it, I never heard this story, so I'm so curious.
Yeah. Well, I had a community of people that I produced my grass-fed beef isolate for. People have followed along with the journey and maybe drinking Fab Four smoothies and knowing what it feels like to get an optimal amount of protein in their day, especially when they start their day with it in the morning, like that blood sugar balancing effect, satiety effect. And I was having a hard time because for a lot of my vegan or vegetarian or plant-based community that aren't willing to eat animal proteins or eat very, very small amounts of it, I wasn't hitting their protein intake that would make them feel full and satisfied, that would balance their blood sugar, that would maintain their lean muscle mass. And so I was recommending plant-based proteins. I was recommending drinking a smoothie as an easy way, you know, to get 20 grams of protein in or 30 grams of protein in if you bulk your smoothie with some nuts and or like some chia or whatever, like add what you need to add to your plant-based protein. And then we know, okay, we have a foundation of protein to start the day. We're going to calm those cravings. We're going to make you energetic and feeling great. Um, but the hard part was when I was looking at the options available, like I don't love rice. It's known for heavy metals. It's a grain. There's a large community of people that like to be grain free. I've had clients with autoimmune diseases like Hashimoto's, where I'll put them on an autoimmune paleo protocol to heal their body to the point of being like able to function at their best. And so I didn't like that. Then, you look at other options like all seed based, like a pumpkin seed protein or a sunflower seed protein, and gram for gram, and like looking at the nutrient profile, they're more fat than they are protein, even though they're the high source of protein for a plant-based seed. Not everyone can handle seeds, and then you look at, okay, so then pea protein is everywhere. And I'm
Yeah.
getting a lot of Cyrex labs from clients, which are, IgG high sensitivity food allergies. Pea protein is coming up more and more as the years go on for me. I know the vendors, because it became so popular, that a lot of the sources of pea protein, even when I kind of went down the route of potentially launching a pea protein, was that if I wanted organic, I'm getting it from China. But if I want conventional, I can get it here from the States. It was just really convoluted. And I didn't ever feel like 100% like this was really, really good, And then when you look at beans in general, like the anti-nutrients are a turnoff. And for a lot of people, they do cause bloating. And they are high in carbohydrates, and they aren't, necessarily a low blood sugar or blood sugar balancing food for people. Like I have clients who add beans to a meal, and I have them on a CGM, and their blood sugar is kind of going through the roof, So some people
Yeah.
have different responses to it. So then, you mentioned a brahmi, which is like the lupini bean. I love the like salt and vinegar ones. They're like a marinated bean. And so when I'd have vegan or vegetarian clients asking me what protein bars they should use, I was like, hey, look, like I get it. Like if you're vegetarian, I'd love for you to like incorporate eggs, like make a couple hard-boiled eggs, have these beans. If you're vegan, like I really relied on those. I was like, okay, like
Yeah.
take this pack with you on your vacation, on your flight, like trying to find creative ways to not only find high quality plant-based proteins for them that I felt comfortable recommending, and also like having something that they could eat that was a good source of fiber. And so when I, stumbled on the Chocho in Mikuna, I was like, this is exactly what I'm looking for, like to know that all the things, whether it's a seed or a nut or a bean, that when they're like crushed and soaked, that we are lowering all of those anti-nutrients, making the protein more bioavailable, making it easily digestible. Just knowing that a process to bring Chocho to a flower and that there's no chemical extraction like hexane, there's no enzymatic process needed. Like it's a whole food, and always being able to go back to like a simple method, especially in the stage of life that I'm in, getting pregnant, breastfeeding, sharing my smoothies with my kids, not having to say like, this is mommy's food and this is your food, because it all should be a whole food process. I mean, that's what I, I was so excited about my grass-fed beef isolate because I'm like, it's heat and water, friends. Like this
Yeah.
is this is the process, and we dehydrate it and you get a protein powder. And I couldn't find that anywhere with a plant-based protein that I felt really comfortable with. And the whole reason why I was using plant-based proteins with my clients in general was to calm cravings, to get a complete protein so that they could have muscle protein synthesis, so they could meet their optimal protein intake. So then I started recommending Mikuna, and it was like, you're a small brand and just getting started. And
Yeah.
by the time this comes out, you'll be on every shelf in Whole Foods. So congratulations.
We're still small. In my
Yeah.
mind, we're always like this. Like I want to believe that we will always be a small company, or at least try to make it feel that way. So
Yeah. But it's just like, you know, I was just like, how do I become a champion of this crop? How do I become a champion of your brand? How do I, bring what I love so much, which is like a minimal ingredient protein that I can stand behind and feel just never, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. If it's
yeah,
not a 120% I can stand behind this and recommend it to you, your family, and your kids, like it just doesn't make sense for me. And so, I mean, it took forever. It was like 2 years from the idea of, okay, I want to do this to actually being able to do it. And if anyone tuned into my podcast with my sister, where we talked about having a hard time bringing this crop to market, I mean, it really has to do with the fact of everything that you shared. It is delicious. It's easy to drink. It's a whole food product. There's no lectins. There's no oxalates. It's a complete protein. It is a low carb ketogenic style bean, which mind blown, right?
yes,
And it comes loaded with fiber. And so it's like checking all the boxes for me when it comes to really showing up for my plant-based community in a way that I feel really proud of. And I could only have done it with you, because the reality is the minute you start to work with, you don't have the personal connection and you can't get in touch with the farm and you're working through distributors and you have a lack of trust, and the product quality that you're getting delivered isn't what you're talking about. It isn't this high quality food, and there's like added things or platelets or you can tell the care of the process wasn't taken. Then it's a no. It's a send the container back. I'm not going to launch anything that I don't feel good about. And so yeah, I mean, all that to say,
props
I'm
to
like,
you for doing that. I mean, like seriously, not a lot of people do that, and looking after your customers like that. I think that it's something invaluable, and like like I love what you just said. Like, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no, right? So
Yeah. I mean, and so that's why you're on the podcast today, because it's not, I don't, I want people to know, Be Well by Kelly sources our Chocho bean from Mikuna family farms, and through all of your personal connections to these farmers that are, lifting them up, being able to provide a better quality of life for them, whether it's their Bitcoin or not, like it's providing a it's truly providing a crop and a product that is a need for so many people that want to live this lifestyle and want to feel their best. And the reality is, it's like if every hormone, neurotransmitter, cell in your body, muscle cell to epithelial lining cell of your gut is made of protein, and you're not getting enough, and you can't get that turnover, and you can't get that satiety, and you can't hold on to your lean muscle mass to balance your blood sugar, like I can't do my job. I'm so proud to share your story. I'm so proud to share our connection. I'm really excited about people just being able to get their hands on it however they get their hands on it and to know, not only is it like phenomenal for being, bringing nitrogen, being just a regenerative crop and being good to the earth, but also to our bodies. So, I
Yeah.
mean,
It
that's
it it
that's
has
where
a
it's at for me.
it has a feel good angle from the nutrition standpoint, the environmental standpoint, and of course, like the social standpoint. And yes, I mean, like I think that there is an advantage that you're sourcing for, like from somebody from Ecuador that has checked every quality probability since like the beginning of the seed and sourcing all the way until the end product. So I think that that's definitely an advantage, and I totally relate. I mean, like you never like when you're sourcing, we do source other ingredients to add flavor and stuff, and sometimes like you like if you haven't seen or know where it's grown and how it's grown, there's always like that doubt factor. Is like, what if this was just mixed with something, or like there's unless you're there and feel it and you can make the judgment for yourself. It's always hard to I wouldn't say compromise. I mean, of course, it's like always like companies that have a great reputation, but it's different if you do see it, right?
Yeah.
So, um, and funny enough, like one of the things that I wanted to share with you is I actually went across all the Andes. So I went all the way to Bolivia, all the way across to Ecuador, right? So I visited South Lake Titicaca. It's funny people laugh about that name. So Lake
Yeah.
Titicaca, all the way up to Cusco and the northern Cordillera of Peru, and the best seeds. Having seen everything like in segments and having taken tests of every community across the entire mountain range, right? The best seeds that have like the best nutritional value, the best properties, the best taste, they come from Ecuador. So I think at the end of the day, it's funny that I did that whole trip, kind of like trying
Mhm.
to improve and look for more supply and like figure out like, okay, where else like does Chocho grow incredibly good and stuff. And I just ended up home again and seeing the best results there. And I'm not sure yet why that is, but from my perspective, or like from like our agronomist perspective, is because in Ecuador we have longer daylight, and
Mhm.
the higher the altitude, it does not freeze. So you
Mm.
don't have like that freeze portion that like will reduce yields like in southern latitude. So Ecuador has like this basically optimal, kind of like Chocho sweet spot zone, 11 to 13,000 feet, doesn't freeze, and it has like 13 hours of sunlight. So
Wow.
um, uh, pretty cool. I mean, like I'm truly honored to be here, and yeah, I mean, like I am so excited that you like hearing you talk about the nutritional qualities and like seeing how like you were looking for this for so long. At the end of the day, this is why I'm here. Like at the end,
Mhm.
like I feel like for the longest time, right? So, and I believe like a lot of entrepreneurs are going to be able to relate to this. It's like you don't even know what's going to come out of this, right? So like I was up there by myself, like trying to make it happen, um, and seeing like the result, like seeing Mikuna has some customers. Like our first customer had Crohn's disease, and I'm not advocating that people with Crohn's disease should take this protein, but for this person specifically, was like the first time that he could digest a protein properly and still consumes it, or like people that are going through immune like I feel like it's friendly for everybody. That's what I'm trying to say. Like it's friendly for like all audiences, like whether you're keto, paleo, vegan, non-vegan, you're looking for a complete good protein. Like I think that definitely without all the added stuff that you see in most product today,
Yeah.
it's definitely like a standout.
Totally. And I just want to validate the work that you've done to bring it to market. It just and standing behind your quality because that makes all the difference in the world, especially when you're on the cutting edge of a new protein. I mean, I feel like in the last 5 or 6 years when I was like, okay, like I definitely want to provide there's a need for this and I want to provide something. It's like, there's hemp protein, there's talks of coconut protein, there's all these different things that kind of like come in to my world and I'm analyzing it and looking at it and the process to create the protein and it's just it's the closest to nature that I can find with the highest nutritional value. And what's interesting is I think for a lot of people, because I came out with my grass-fed beef isolate protein first, they're like, this is her absolute favorite. And what has come into practice for me and my family is that because Mikuna, and the Chocho bean flour specifically is more dense than like an airy, really ground kind of collagen style protein. Um, it stands up against like all of my baking. It thickens the smoothie when I'm looking for a little more weight. Like
Mhm.
I'll find myself in my little pantry doing like a half scoop of my plant and a half scoop of my beef because I'm looking for all the benefits, but I'm getting that flavor mix. And sometimes I'm mixing my like chocolate plant base with like a half scoop of my vanilla beef just to because I know that there's going to be little people around me trying to drink my smoothie and I'm trying to get
Yeah.
enough protein, but also just to get the texture or the consistency or the application right. It just there are so many things where I'll get a protein cookie recipe or a bread recipe or to thicken something with a protein powder, and I'm like, this really the application of it has been really amazing for use in even like baked goods as a mom with toddlers who are like, I want to drink the smoothie, but like you're like, this is a breakfast cookie, and they're like, what? It's
Yeah.
crazy, and
Yeah.
they'll eat it.
And I feel like
So
that's like the next step uh for Mikuna, like like something that we're gonna put some emphasis. It's funny that you mentioned this. I was just working on this yesterday. So we want to just like make it super easy for customers, consumers to see all the immense amount of applications that you could use this. And I mean, we've made gourmet gnocchi or like pasta with
yeah,
it. I mean, like
yeah,
one of my favorite recipes that we have actually on our website was like created with a friend of mine. We did Chocho tacos for Mikuna's Taco Tuesday,
yeah.
and we did the meat, the shell, and the sauce all with Chocho. Like a taco was like 50 grams of protein and tasted like delicious. So you have like all these like unbelievable amount of applications for like that smooth taste, right? So
Hmm.
I feel like the next step, I think, like for us as a company, is to see what products do customers want to see with Chocho. I mean, we do have a few surprises, maybe in like in the snack world, that
Mm.
you might get 60 grams of protein per bag or in a snack. And it's a little like uh, fun stuff that we're developing. But what would people or your audience or the audience in general would love to see made out of this protein? I think that the possibilities are endless because anything that you can make with peas soy, you can make with Chocho and probably
Right.
better. So
Right. It's interesting because coming off of Expo West, we were talking about this before the podcast. I knew just keeping a pulse on Chocho before we were even introduced that there was like people talking about pasta, like competing with
yeah,
the lentil pastas of the world and the gluten-free pastas of the world. And there were puffs and crackers and chips and like applications of the yin yang with this stuff, right? It's just like you can use it in anything. I think what will make this product a standout is if whoever brings to market those type of applications without the gums, without the fillers, staying true to a
yeah,
minimal ingredient list, pulling out the industrial seed oils and opting for something that isn't made with safflower or sunflower oils or canola oils, because I think it's defeating the purpose. But again, it's just like it's exciting to think wow, it would actually be something that would be not a carbohydrate grain based flour snack product that just thinking about all the moms out there who are like, my kid like gets up from the table, doesn't eat their protein, then all they want is snacks. And it's like to have things like that where you can stand behind and feel like, okay, I'm getting my kid some protein to balance their blood sugar, to regulate their mood and make them feel good. There's sky's the limit when it comes to what this could become. And it's just exciting to be on the cutting edge of it with you and just to see like all that's coming next for Mikuna and the Chocho bean itself.
yeah. And you know what? We're so grateful and And I'm so excited to be partnering up with you because like those things that you're mentioning about keeping ingredients simple and keeping the integrity of food, it's so important to us. And it's like part of like what we've been doing as a company is like whatever we throw out there, it's gonna be like, you know, uh have a lot of integrity behind it. And
Right.
that just goes like into like the roots of our mission and ideology that if we have like this amazing ingredient, it should be mixed with ingredients alike or foods
Absolutely.
alike. So um
Right. Gotta think about those people who came to you who had autoimmune diseases and could drink the protein. Like, it's those, when you're thinking about all of those people and the quality of ingredients, which I know you've always done, um, the product speaks for itself. And, the speed at which the general public starts to bring it into their home and their pantries and they're, using it in their smoothies and things like that's, um, we'll see what the future holds, but I know it always has a groundswell and it takes a minute and then it takes off and it's always better. It's always better. And I know all these CPG companies, whenever they have integrity and they have a lock on their ingredient list and zero compromises, it's only a matter of time. And so I'm so thankful for you, Ricky. So proud
me
of the
too.
business that you've created. So thankful for your partnership and helping me source the highest quality deep bitter chocho bean. And knowing that I'm supporting those farmers, I can't wait to have this kiddo and have a family trip down to Ecuador and see these beautiful purple flowers firsthand and really just know the person on the other end
How
of
about
purchase.
me too, Kelly? And how about we do a follow-up podcast once you have your kiddo? We can do a follow-up podcast or interview on the Chocho fields, so you can
I would
see.
love that.
I would love for your audience to see everything that goes into place to basically source the bean all the way until like the finished product. And you're always welcome in Ecuador. Thank you so much for having me. You definitely have a family there uh,
Mhm.
uh, to attend to you and your family. And I'm beyond excited. And thank you for having me today. I'm stoked, as
I
stoked as you can be. So
I'm super stoked too, Ricky, and
yes,
we're gonna put pictures of your beautiful farms in today's show notes, along with a store locator for where people can find and purchase Mikuna, links to your social profiles in Mikuna so people can follow along and learn more about the mission. I mean, I love the ownership team that you've pulled together at Mikuna. I know we have a lot of overlaps with my family over at Hume Supernatural Deodorant and a lot of friends in common like Jeremy Horowitz. And it's it really feels good to support good people and mission driven companies. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
absolutely. And to give a shout out to Jeremy in this podcast because he did introduce us,
Yes, you
and
did.
it's my favorite Dio. And I definitely love what he's building. So I look up to him and to like the next steps that we're building Mikuna as a brand. So big shout out to you, Jeremy. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll put discount codes for all of it in the show notes too, so that everyone could get their hands on stuff. But Ricky, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much, and have an amazing birthday today. Happy
Thanks,
birthday to you.
Thanks, Kelly. I spending it with the right people. So I love it. Thank you, and we'll talk soon.
Perfect.